In fact, I was able to cut 20% off my startup's AWS bill by making this change. Are you running AWS EKS clusters? Is your AWS bill getting out of control? Do you think that those EKS clusters might have something to do with it? In this video, we're going to talk about 7 ways to reduce your EKS costs and help you keep your AWS bill reasonable. Let's get started. Use EC2 instance types that are appropriate for your EKS workloads. You can save a lot of costs by simply choosing instance types that match up your AWS workload a little bit better and don't require as many unused resources. Also look at using different instance types if your workloads are consuming one resource more than another. For example, memory-intensive workloads might consume all of the available memory on a node, but only consume like 40% of the CPU. Now, this would be a great opportunity to see if there's an instance type that better fits your use case, such as a memory-optimized EC2 instance type. However, I would caution against perfect fitting your workloads. In the event that a node abruptly goes offline, this can cause a major outage for your application if your EKS cluster can't quickly spin up a new node for your workload because there isn't enough capacity in your cluster. You can also save on costs by not using specific types of resources if you don't actually need them. For example, don't use a GPU attached EC2 instance type for machine learning models and workloads if they will run perfectly fine without the GPUs. You can also make sure that you are making the most of those special resources by leveraging node selectors, node affinity, and pod affinity to control where certain workloads can and can't run. I ran into a specific use case where a data science team asked me to spin up a GPU node and attach it to our EKS cluster so they could run a machine learning model and use the GPU for inference. Now, when we ran performance testing, we found that running the machine learning model on both the GPU node and a node without a GPU was essentially the same. We were able to detach that GPU node and save on those costs and just run that machine learning model without GPU-based inference. Cluster auto-scaling can help you save costs by automatically scaling your EKS cluster up and down based on demand. If you have workloads that are bursty, cluster auto-scaling can help you out by automatically provisioning nodes for your cluster to handle the workload, then decommissioning nodes when they are no longer needed and there is excess capacity in your EKS cluster. Managed node groups are a simple way to handle this auto-scaling process based on demand. Using an infrastructure as code tool like Terraform can help you automate the creation, management, and deletion of your EKS clusters. This can help you save time and money by quickly being able to spin up and tear down entire EKS clusters and their attached nodes. You get the benefit of being able to run a Kubernetes cluster without needing to keep it around when you aren't actually using it. When combined with high amounts of code to provision infrastructure, you can set up entire AWS accounts, run automated tests from this known good state, then tear everything down to have a truly repeatable validation process. Run fewer EKS clusters. Kubernetes and EKS by extension has an amazing ability to scale up to tens of thousands of nodes. AWS charges you per hour for each EKS cluster you create and have running. So the fewer clusters you have running, the cheaper that portion of the cost is. Now, you might say, it costs a trivial amount to run one more EKS cluster and to have those truly separated workloads running in separate clusters. But the overhead of managing multiple EKS clusters, dealing with all of the permissioning and RBAC, actually adds up and costs you more than just having one more control plane running. It's the time, effort, and energy of you and your fellow employees where the money really gets spent. If you are concerned about co-locating your workloads all onto the same cluster, you can separate them by Kubernetes namespace and use the role-based access control built into Kubernetes to control who has access to what resources. At this time this video was written, each EKS cluster by default could have up to 30 managed node groups per cluster, and each managed node group could have up to 450 nodes. If this doesn't happen to be enough, these default limits for managed node groups and nodes per managed node group are adjustable. EC2 reserved instances are a way to get a discount on your EC2 instances that act as your EKS nodes by committing to use them for a certain period of time. This can help you save on costs if you have predictable workloads and you know you will need those EC2 instances a certain amount of time. At a minimum, you will save 20% on the cost of the EC2 instance. And if you go with the most cost-effective approach, potentially over 70% of the cost you would have spent had you just paid the on-demand price for the EC2 instance. Spot instances are spare EC2 instances that can be purchased at a discount rate. These instances can be used for non-critical workloads, such as batch processing, where the workload can safely be stopped and started again if the spot instance is terminated. Spot instances can save you potentially up to 90% of the cost of the EC2 instance, but you'll want to make sure that you are only running workloads on the spot instances that can handle being stopped on a short notice, typically less than 2 minutes. Bonus tip, this might sound counterintuitive, but you can cut your AWS bill even further by moving your ECS workloads to EKS. Yes, you'll pay for EC2 instances, but in my experience, ECS is a lot more expensive than running those same workloads on EKS. In fact, I was able to cut 20% off my startup's AWS bill by making this change. If you found these tips helpful, like the video. If you put these tips into practice, comment below how much you saved on your EKS costs. If you want to hear more about what I have to say about AWS and DevOps, subscribe to the channel. Stick around for my next video. Until next time.